Good evening, I'm Greer McGeary, President of Seahorse Victoria. Tonight my guest is Blair Denney. Welcome, Blair.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
One of the things that I sort of generally ask somebody first up is, when did you realise that there was something slightly different in your life?
If I could pinpoint a specific time, it'd probably be back in primary school. I didn't have as much interest in some of the sort of the more masculine things that were happening in school, so I went to a co-ed Catholic school both in primary and secondary. But I didn't really take in with the more sort of masculine sports, but when the girls were doing gymnastics, I was like, oh, that's the thing I want to do. So I remember they'd do that. And then during lunch times, they'd be teaching me kind of what they learned, like the cartwheels and the splits and all of that kind of stuff. And I specifically remember back in year 6, there was a day where they decided that I needed to man up. I needed to be more of a man. How are we going to do that? So I brought some gel that I got down at the supermarket and came in, and they all tried to, walk like this, so try and move your shoulders more, or try and style the hair. And I mean, clearly none of that worked. Even back in primary school, as early as that in my life, I think was the first time that I noticed that there was something going on.
I went to Catholic schools as well, but it's not a cause of being trans or having a trans nature. Have you got siblings?
No, I'm an only child. So.
Yeah, so were your parents aware of something different with you?
I don't know when they became aware, but there was certainly a time. So as well as being trans, I'm also bisexual. And back in year 8, I think I first noticed that, and I remember a time coming out to them and saying, I think I might be gay or bisexual or something, and I think there's something going on. And at the time they were like, well, we don't really think so, but we're going to support you in whatever you choose, go for it. And I checked in a couple of years later, back in about year 10, and said, hey, so do you still think that it's just kind of a phase? And they're like, oh no, this is definitely, there's definitely something going on. So I don't know when it changed for them, but I think they kind of came to understand that I was who I was at that time.
It's lovely to have supportive parents. Like we hear so many stories of individuals, trans in particular, that are really treated with disdain as young people, and of course that impacts the rest of their life. So you had that sort of image of wanting to be a gymnast, as it were, in primary school. What was secondary school really like?
Secondary school, I think it was just a period of figuring stuff out. I entered secondary school thinking that I was cisgender, heterosexual, and left having gone through many, many, many titles throughout that time. I think it was in year 8, because I didn't play football and I didn't talk about girls in the same way that a lot of my male classmates did. And I became friends with a lot more of the women in my class. And so I think as they started noticing things about boys, I also started noticing things about boys at the same time. So maybe there was something going on there. And I think I just kind of continued through with this, not really realizing there was anything much different. I'm just the same as the girls there. We look at boys. We like Draco Malfoy was kind of the pop culture icon for a lot of us. And I think we just kind of continued through there. It was only about maybe year 9 that I thought, hang on, no, there's something very, very unique going on here. There's something very different going on here. And that was the first time that I came out as gay. That was the first title that I thought was going on. And that was really disarming for, I think, a lot of the people that were giving me some grief while I was in high school, because they'd pick on me and they'd say, oh, you're gay. And one day I said, yep, I think I am. I think you're right. I think I am. And it just, they didn't have a way of using that against me.
As a teenager, I was big for my age, sort of through primary school, and and I love my athletics, so I was into all that, but I never sort of saw myself as being gay or anything like that. But in particular as a teenager, I used to think, I'd like to wear that.
Yes.
But being 6 foot tall sort of thing, it was very, not quite you just instinctively knew that it's not the right thing.
I think in high school, I remember going through year 12 thinking, for muck-up day, I'm going to come in the girls' uniform, because I thought the girls' uniform was much better. The boys' uniform was just pants and a tie and boring. But I thought the girls' was always much. And I never did it. But one day I kind of hope sometime soon that I'd be able to go back and get the pieces of the uniform back and just to try it, just to see what it would have been like had I been able to do that back at the time.
The point you made there about they had no comeback when you had openly said who I am, that it is something I think you learn as time goes on, that when you're open about yourself, there's no real recourse for others to, or particularly bullies, because they can't see any weakness with you.
It meant that, like, the other times that would happen, people would be like, oh, you're gay. Yep. And they'd be like, and that was the end of the conversation. That was, I'd continue on and we'd keep going about our day. That was all it was. Yeah. But I think it was really surprising to see how that changed some of the culture at my school. Because again, my high school was a co-ed Catholic school out in the country, out in South Gippsland. So when I came out, I was the first person in my school to have come out. But by the time I left in year 12, there were about 20 of us. We had a little group that met in the chapel secretly with the help of some teachers. So we were always there, but I think it's just seeing one person come out and, they were okay. Maybe I could do that too. So you could see that the people were there, and you could see that the culture changed over 3 years.
A really good thing where somebody does have the courage to finally say, oh, well, this is where I'm at. And it opens up, particularly adults, like the Catholic schools in various parts of Australia and around the world don't have a good reputation for being tolerant of gay teachers but to have that at your school was pretty good.
It was an interesting place to be, because the senior leadership at the school I they couldn't be outwardly supportive because they were worried of ramifications from the parent teachers or the priest who was sort of administering. So it was a case of individuals trying to do what they could in an environment that wasn't necessarily supportive. So I think it was really lovely to see how people still tried to support the students through that, even when they couldn't necessarily do it openly and outwardly.
Because I remember at school, probably in Form 4, we were going to muck up on an elderly teacher, and in walked the lay fill-in teacher because he was off sick or something like that. He said something in that class, sort of a truism or an adage that at a 21-year school reunion, he was there, and I said, well, in some ways it was the single most important thing I learnt at school. He just had that sort of sense of understanding of people.
This teacher that was helping, when I had that initial conversation, I did not think that that's how that conversation was going to go, but he sat down, he's like, hey, I've heard what's going on. I want to help, and I want to be there, and I want to do what we can. So that was, and seeing individuals in those positions demonstrate that respect. It's like, I didn't think I'd find support here, but I did, and that's really important.
Having that then support, how did that influence you when you were leaving school and picking a university course to do?
I just wanted to move out of my hometown. My hometown was very, not completely, but very, very white Australian, and very, what's the word that we use these days? Monochrome, I suppose you'd say. So when there became an opportunity to be able to move into the city for university, whether it be Monash, whether it be UniMelb, La Trobe, any of those, I was like, well, let's just go. So I found a course that I was really passionate about. It was a science course in geospatial science. And I just started there. And once I moved into the city, so I was living in student accommodation in the CBD, in international student accommodation, no less. So you were just exposed to so many more new perspectives, new ideas, new people, and that, I think, presented a lot of diversity in many different forms that I was really, really excited to see. It was like, oh wow, there's people from everywhere who do different things, and I'm really keen to kind of be another part of that.
Did you find a sort of besides the sort of your peer group support, what about higher level, like your vice principal that was supported, was that sort of support around as well?
I think so. I think very early on in my degree, I established that there was something going on. We had at RMIT, the student union was doing a rush week, which was you in teams and you had activities that you could do together. And I was the team captain of Golden Gay Time. And for that, I would wear there was this rainbow cape that I had that I would wear during this week. And I also wore it to the lectures in between when I was doing the activities and actually getting educated. And I think when the lecturers saw that, they saw what was happening. And I don't think there's any specific lecturers that I had a conversation with, but there was support. There was support for the things that I was more interested in when I demonstrated that, so geospatial science being mapping, and a lot of human geography, when I demonstrated interest in mapping queer histories and stuff like that. There was support, even if it wasn't people's personal experience, but kind of a solidarity of, we want to help you follow your passion and follow what's interested to you.
The course that you did, what does that really involve?
Geospatial science is essentially mapping the world that we live in. So it's a mixture of cartography, which is my special area, my favorite part of geospatial science, surveying, like you see on building sites, satellite imagery, kind of the whole picture of figuring out where things happen and where they are. So it was a really, really small degree. We had an intake of 27, and when I graduated during COVID, there were 7 of us who graduated that year. So it was really, really small community, but I really, really enjoyed it.
Having sort of graduated with that in a very small field, is employment in that field easy to get?
It was at the start. I think things are a little bit more complex now. Coming out, everyone graduated into full-time jobs. We all had a graduate position lined up. I took the summer off after I graduated and then started in February in federal government. Some other people went to consultancies. There was a variety of places that people went, and some people have stayed in those positions. I've moved around a little bit, went from federal government to private to starting my own business to state government. So there's a number of different places that I've worked, but at least in the beginning, it was all quite employable.
Quite clearly a diverse working area, like with the government and private and things like that. You're finding that your broader social network is very supportive?
In each place that I've worked, there's probably been at least one individual that I've kind of clung on to as a bit of a maternal figure, maybe, to kind of help me navigate both being a graduate or being a young professional in the field, but also navigating my own identity. And there's been organisations where I work and everyone else that I work with is queer. When I was working in the state government, that was Forest Fire Management Victoria, and my manager was openly gay and very prideful about that. And many of the other people that I worked with in state government were queer. I also worked in environmental sciences, so working at the intersection of state government and the environment, everyone is queer. Whereas there's been other places where I've been the sole one, and I've had people who have been supportive, but maybe not quite as understanding. So they'd support me in what they thought support would look like, but not in the same way. So it's been good to have sort of the different professional supports. As I said, navigating both what I'm doing and how my career is developing, as well as who I want to be.
My observation over the last 20 odd years is that, governments, particularly in Victoria, but I think even federally, but definitely in Victoria and Melbourne in particular, has been very supportive of difference and benefits that difference brings, the different points of view, whether it's somebody's background or whether they're in part of the alphabet community, it seems to be something that's been really good. But unfortunately, there is pushback from the extreme. So when did you sort of understand that maybe there's a trans part of your nature?
There's been a number of different signs of things going on, but it wasn't until February 2023 that I actually clicked and said, this is what's going on. And that's because I went up to World Pride in Sydney for 2023, and there was a trans and gender diverse film shorts night at one of the cinemas, I think in Newtown. And I remember watching these film shorts and thinking, oh yeah, this is really cool, there's different perspectives, but I hadn't really been exposed to much besides the binary. When I thought trans, I thought either trans woman, completely binary transition, or the identity of non-binary with the shaved head, the they them pronouns, and I didn't really identify with either of those. But one of the film shorts that I watched there, it was shot in Melbourne, so there was a tram shot in there. It showed this boy starting to realize what was going on and having flashbacks to being able to dress in certain ways and just connecting with this. And the whole film was about him confiding in someone and just saying, I don't know where it's going. I don't know what this means, but there's something going on. And I remember watching that and thinking, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I feel. And so that's when I took on the identity of non-binary. I started trying things with pronouns, and really trying to figure out more about myself. And it's interesting because that's kind of the moment for me. But looking back, there's been things going on for a long time. I remember back in 2016 when I was involved in -18, and I was wearing crop tops and skirts on the streets of Melbourne, walking down Elizabeth Street. So somehow that happened and then went back underneath everything for a while and then resurfaced. But it's probably since then that I've been actively starting to make moves, and whether that's social transitioning or medical transitioning, and starting to play around with how do I want to present.
And they're big decisions one has to make. I know for, like when I've been in Melbourne not very long, I met my partner and we ended up marrying kids and all that sort of thing. And there was always this, when it sort of started to sneak into the relationship a little bit, sneaking dressing. But the question was, as you sort of mentioned a moment ago, about where will this stop? And it's a question I could never answer.
Exactly. And I think even over the time that we've known each other, I've started saying, okay, well, maybe I want to try HRT. Maybe I want to try moving from a kind of an androgynous space to maybe something a little bit more feminine. And everything that I try there, every step that I'm taking, I'm enjoying the outcomes of it. Sometimes I step a little bit too far and I'm like, oh no, I need to come back a little bit, but maybe I'll get there at one point. But I think it's just been about trying things. And so far I haven't tried anything that hasn't felt good. So I'm kind of following that feeling of, oh, well, if that felt good and this felt good, maybe we'll try the next thing and see how that goes. So at first I thought it was going to be sort of a data gathering exercise. I try a bunch of things, see what works, and then kind of go with that. But I'm 2 years in now, and I'm still trying to figure out and still learning things.
At the end of the 90s, we lost our money in a business. So that presented opportunities then to, with the kids all grown up, to start dealing openly with going to seek counselling and things like that. And sort of learnt in the end that it was how do we make our lives work better for us?
Yes.
And for a long time, like I needed work, so working in a warehouse in a fluoro shirt and steel cap boot. I found people were really respectful. That in the last business I worked for before I retired, it turned out that they were all a bit scared to ask me why I had the long blonde hair, but they knew about me. They'd seen me on TV and all that, and from the managing director right down to the contract delivering staff, they actually protected me without me ever having to ask for it.
For me, what made me realise, okay, I can actually do this, because it had been bubbling away and I'd been doing something socially, but what made me realise I can actually do this in a work sense potentially was I went back out to my hometown for a while and lived with my parents again for a bit. And while I was there, I went and did a first aid course because mine had come up for expiry and might as well do that again. And I got there early. I was one of the first people there, and then some early childhood educators and some tradies came in and some teachers came in, and there were a bunch of different, and we were just about to start, and then this girl walks in and she's all frazzled because she's running late. And she's like, oh, hi. And he's just like, get a seat. And so it comes and sits down right next to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. We're talking eyeliner, beautiful makeup, and then mechanics scrubs,
Yeah.
just covered in grease.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting look. And she came and sat down, and then she took out keys and put them on the desk, and they had a trans lanyard. And I was like, oh my God, in Gippsland, in my hometown, he's a trans person next to me. This is amazing. And so during the break, I came up and I said, hey, I saw your lanyard. Are you trans? And she was like, yes, that's why I've got the lanyard. And I was like, how is it? How is it in the country? What's it like? And she said, socially, not that great. There's been some not great moments, but in my business where I work as a mechanic for a trucking company, I've got some colleagues who would absolutely support me. If I have customers that are giving any grief, then these guys are absolutely going to get behind me. And seeing that she had this small community of people who would absolutely back her in such a masculine field, exactly. That's when I decided, oh my gosh, this can be done. Yeah. I can do this, and that's what made. I think that afternoon I went and booked my appointment with the endocrinologist that I had a referral for a couple of months, because I was like, that's it, I'm going to do this.
That's my observation over a long period in and around not just Melbourne, but going to places like Ballarat and even driving across to Adelaide, stopping and getting petrol at little whistle stops and things like that, that I haven't had any dramas. I think when you display confidence in yourself, then other people react to you differently. Bullies are very good, adept at picking up, or there's a weakness there. But you know, it's sort of, in a sense, really nice when people just say, I'm there for the same reason everyone else is, and just treat you exactly the same way.
One of the fears I had was about looking different and what would be going on, and if people could sense that difference. But now I'm starting to realise that people are, in most cases, and there's always fringe cases, of course, but people are in most cases supportive. If they can see that this is what you're going for, they'll support you in that. If they see me and I still have a little bit of stubble, but I've got the eyeliner and the earrings, then they can see that there's an attempt being made, and they'll support me in that. So I think, as much I say this out loud, but internally it's still terrifying. And I think the next step for me is to kind of start going forwards in that. November 1st is coming up as Transgender Month with Transgender Victoria. I'm not sure if it's a larger thing than that, but that's the kind of day that I'm deciding, I think I'm going to do it full sort of she, her in the workplace and try that. And, I know that I've got HR supporting me. I've had those initial conversations. I know that it's a supportive workplace, but it's still scary to take that plunge. So that's what I'm hoping to kind of do there.
There's always that sort of sense of, maybe the ground is going to open up and swallow me.
It's scary, but each person that I talk to and find that they've been able to do it and they're still okay, everything's been okay, gives me a little bit more confidence. I don't think it can ever convince me without doing it myself, but it gives me a bit more confidence that if I were to take that step, then I would also be okay. And in the same way that I look back to high school, where I was the first person and it was terrifying, but then other people found confidence in that. Going to things like Seahorse and Social Butterflies and seeing other people who have done this and been doing this for quite some time, it's like, oh, it can be done. And in some cases, I feel I'm in an environment where I've got a bit more support than some other people do. So if they could do it in a really challenging environment, then I'm sure I can give it a go.
Turning up to Seahorse 20 odd years ago, looking through the glass door and thinking there's people as badly dressed as I am.
Exactly.
And that was comforting.
Especially the first time that I went, I felt a lot of comfort from other people who were trying things for the first time as well. I came to Seahorse the same night as another lady was coming along for the first time after just realizing everything and starting her process. So as she's learned tips, she's given me tips, and we've shared things and built on that. And it really feels like a safe community to try stuff and know that I can get some comments from other people who, if they give me constructive feedback, it's not in a negative way. It's in a, well, here's something that I've tried, and I'm giving you this advice so that you can learn from me instead of having to learn the hard way.
And there is a lot of that. That's why a group like Seahorse has been relatively successful over many years. It again have some struggles in the longer run, but as the world is much more open, we've found that there's probably not quite the same need as there was 30, 40 years ago. The challenge I think, is just being able to maintain, the political scene in a sense, because, with what's happening in America, we've had instances of it in Australia where there's this political pushback by certain elements of some parties about trying to redefine, it's a binary situation and the challenge that presents to lots of people, particularly younger people, because, as you've described in our conversation, you're learning about yourself through school and then getting into the broader adult population, and you're still just, I know for myself, even right up until a retirement age, you're still exploring yourself.
Those groups have been really positive in giving a space to be able to try those different things, because back when I was in high school was the thing that I tried. It was the place that I could try things, and I kind of had to live with a bit more of the ramifications because it wasn't as much of a supportive group there. But having these spaces where I can try different makeup, try different things, talk to people about things that I'm interested in. I'll give a specific example from every time I go to Seahorse, there's something else that I learn and something else that I find out. And most recently, there was a girl I was talking to. I've been thinking of maybe changing some of the sports that I'm trying. I currently do triathlons, but I'm thinking of maybe doing something a little bit more expressionistic. And lyra or pole dancing have been two sports that I've been thinking of maybe getting into. But I've been very nervous about it because, it's a very expressive sport, and I'm still kind of figuring out the body that I am in and how I express myself through that. So I was talking to another one of the girls about this because she had previously done cycling and had moved across, and turns out that she was going to the same gym that I was thinking of going to. And she said that she had no problems starting there. And if anyone did have any problems, then the staff have handled it really well and she hasn't found out at all. So that was a case of, so it can be done. Okay, I haven't got an excuse now. So that's something that I wasn't even expecting to have that conversation, but having spoken to her about starting that sport, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can do this. Now I know that there's a place that another trans person goes to and feels safe in. That gives me the confidence to go to. So even if for me, Seahorse isn't the same as it might be for some other people, I'm still getting something every time I go. There's something more that I'm learning. There's more people that I'm meeting. There's more tips that I'm getting. So I find value in it for that, if not for the same reason that someone else might find value in it.
I think on that positive note, hearing your story and your journey to where you are, thank you for joining me in the conversation.
Absolutely. It's really lovely to talk about it, and thank you for giving me the space for that.
I'm Greer McGeary. My guest has been Blair Denney. Thank you for watching Bent TV.